from the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast.
Coming up on Ag Day, U.S. Ag watching closely as the president prepares to impose hefty duties on China. Even before tariff threats, pork producers are struggling with their books.
If he scratches this year, it'll be lucky.
The Fed hikes its interest rate. How will that hit farmers? In agribusiness,
we used to come on the show years ago and say the economy's doing okay, it's going 45 and a 55. I'd say we're going over the speed limit now.
And how lousy chores for kids is paying off when they grow up.
Ag Day, brought to you by the Chevy Silverado, the most dependable, longest-lasting full-size pickups on the road.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. All eyes will be on the White House today as President Trump says he's ready to confront China very strongly over trade, and that action comes in the form of tariffs. The president held a meeting at the White House Thursday to talk with his trade team about whether to move forward with 25% tariffs on Chinese goods. The White House has indicated it would impose duties on $50 billion of Chinese goods. Now, there's no specific timeline, but the White House says the tariffs will be imposed shortly. The president's comments come as Secretary of State Mike Pompeo met with Chinese President Xi Jinping to discuss the North Korean summit. But the topic of trade was also discussed. The U.S. holds a $375 billion deficit to China. The administration wants to narrow that gap. President Trump is expected to announce today a final list of tariff targets against Chinese products shipped into the U.S.
We discussed trade today. Our deficit with China is still too high. I stress how important it is for President Trump to rectify that situation so that trade becomes more balanced, more reciprocal, and more fair, with the opportunity to have American workers be treated fairly.
The Chinese foreign minister saying, quote, "Now, we are now facing two options. One is cooperation and win-win. The other is confrontation and lose-lose. We have chosen the first one, and we hope the U.S. will make the same wise choice." The foreign minister went on to say, of course, we have prepared for the second option. China has previously threatened to respond with proportional duties on everything from American soybeans to pork to airplanes. Even before a tariff dispute with China, now Mexico, U.S. pork producers were already facing price pressure. Betsy Gibbon joins us now with more.
Clinton, even if we take the tariff talk out completely, pork producers still face some serious challenges this year. USDA has production increasing more than 4% in 2018, an increase from last year's record production. There's plenty of shackle space coming online, but low national employment numbers make finding enough help to process all of that pork a challenge. At the farm, economists warn higher production costs and corn prices could add pressure to margins.
I don't think the hog producer for this year will really make any serious money. This year will be if he scratches this year, it'll be lucky.
So we're looking at losses right now of about $11 per head on average. As we project out to 2019, that makes losses right now projected out around $14 per head of loss for farrow to finish average cost producers in 2019.
These numbers do not include the trade tariffs and demand uncertainty looming over the industry. Hurt says domestic consumption is pretty strong. He says retail prices of pork are up 2% this year.
Speaking of economics, the Federal Reserve raising its benchmark interest rate for the second time this year, citing solid U.S. economic growth and rising inflation. The Federal Reserve hiking its benchmark short-term interest rate a quarter percentage point. Fed says in a statement that economic growth has been, quote, rising at a solid rate, an update from the moderate growth it cited in May. The Fed signaling that it may step up its pace of rate increases, now expected to see 4 in 2018. On the farm level, bankers say this means the cost of borrowing money is going up.
The leverage on the farm is still very, very low. So when you think about interest expense as a component of total earnings or profits, we're still at like 12 or 13 cents of every dollar of earnings is spent on interest. In the 1980s, that was 35 cents. So we're a long ways off from really having a problem with interest expense causing a problem with delinquencies and defaults. That said, there will be pockets where it's going to be tougher, and individual farmers may have more or less leverage than the average. So it's going to be a case-by-case basis.
A surging economy isn't just hitting the balance sheet. The number of Americans on jobless rolls hit a near 44.5-year low this week, pointing to a rapidly tightening job and labor market. That and the Trump administration's immigration enforcement focus has H-2A visa requests on the rise. According to the Department of Labor, the number of 6-month H-2A farm worker visas sits at 113,000. That's a 65% increase than when President Trump first took office. Florida, Georgia, and Washington lead the list. The U.S. Department of Labor may certify up to 240,000 H-2A visas by the end of the year. A new guest worker program may get a vote in the House next week as part of an immigration reform push. A spokesperson for Paul Ryan saying the House will vote on two competing immigration bills next week. The compromise also tied to a second vote on the Farm Bill. Under House rules, a revote on the Farm Bill can happen between now and June 22nd. Ag Chairman Mike Conaway saying he expects that to happen either Thursday or Friday of next week. The Senate also working toward a possible Farm Bill vote as early as next week. During the markup Wednesday, members of the Senate Ag Committee expressing support for continuing to fund rural broadband expansion.
And I know we all agree with, and this is needed in rural communities, is reliable, high-speed internet.
This package builds off of Congress's existing commitment to expand broadband deployment to the most underserved and rural areas. By prioritizing projects that provide broadband to the most rural areas, we can boost connectivity, assisting in bringing the next generation back to the farm and enhancing our agricultural productivity.
According to a USDA NASS report on computer usage, 29% of U.S. farms have no access to the internet. Monday, I'll take a closer look at the lack of high-speed internet in farm country and how it's affecting a farmer's ability to compete in the global marketplace. That story Monday on AgDay. And just a reminder, USDA NASS wrapping up collection of data for the 2017 Census of Agriculture. USDA's census is conducted every 5 years. The deadline to submit your paper questionnaire is today. Farmers and ranchers can also respond online. That deadline is the end of July. The last ag census was conducted back in 2012. Mike Hoffman joining us now to look at crop comments. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Clinton. Let's start off in Leonardville, Kansas. Sierra Dugan says her area suffers from drought. She's in need of rain soon, with temperatures staying put in the 100-degree range lately. The U.S. Drought Monitor shows a large portion of the state is under drought. Over half is a moderate drought. A third is considered severe, and nearly 13% of the state classified as extreme. Heading north from the south, Scott Phillips says he's happy with the canola in Hayward and Saskatchewan. He says the area is in need of rain, though, as well. And taking a look at the wind speed forecast, lots of the plains going to start off on the windy side today, and it gets windier in places like Wisconsin, down into Kansas. Also fairly windy in many parts of the west. Heading into the day tomorrow, we're going to be fairly windy in the western portions of Texas, southeastern New Mexico, on up into the northern plains, and heading through the day, it gets windier with the remnants of bud coming into New Mexico. We'll talk about that and have your forecast coming up, but first, here are some hometown temps.
Save time each day and receive the latest market prices directly to your cell phone with market updates. It makes it effortless to stay aware of shifting market prices. Just text Markets 8 to 31313 to get started.
All right, next, Tommy Grisafi joins me at the Agribusiness Desk as we discuss global economies. And Farm Journal College TV will explore the importance of proper settings for your irrigation system's runtime. And my salute to Father's Day, which can get a little prickly. I'll make some farm sense of it all coming up. In agribusiness, a lot of red on the board Thursday. Let's go find out why from the traders on the floor of the CME in Chicago.
It is another risk-off day in the grain sector. It seems like a broken record as has been under a lot of pressure over the past couple of weeks, and just really leaving behind what looks like a technical graveyard across the board, specifically though in the corn and the soybean contracts. A lot of attention continuing to be on weather as we go through this pivotal time of year. Now, as far as the soybeans are concerned, same type of thing. We've taken a big haircut over the past couple of weeks. We have funds likely net short at this point in time. If you look back just 2 weeks ago, they were net long over 100,000 contracts. So they've peeled back quite a bit. Wouldn't be surprised to see them net short here in the next commitment of traders report. Wheat traded firmer after the USDA report this week, but gave back that ground and is really rolling over again on spillover pressure from corn and beans, and really just a lack of bullish news. It's been Oliver Slope with Blue Line Futures from the floor of the CME.
Tommy Grisafi, Advanced Trading, our guest here at the Agribusiness Desk. Tommy, as we talk about, I guess, general markets and global economies, we do know that interest rates are on their way up.
They are. We hit a cycle where for 10 years, maybe 9 years, we didn't move interest rates, and our government was keeping interest rates artificially low, which anyone who's old, you talk to a grandpa or a farmer in their 50s, they talk about the 80s a lot. Are we in that type of interest rate? No, we're doing what's called getting back to normalization. But with the stock market continually having good days and the economy on fire, we used to come on the show years ago and say the economy's doing okay, it's going 45 and a 55. I'd say we're going over the speed limit now. When you talk to people about labor and creating jobs, we're doing 70 and a 65. And if this economy keeps heating up and the world economies heat up, we're going to heat things up, and one of the ways to curb that is by raising interest rates. So our Fed has a few more interest rates targeted for this year. We'll see if they do them or not. It's interesting because when you talk about interest rates, you have to figure out as a farmer that the cost of storing grain is going up. And so when you look at what you can get for your corn in December versus July, you have to figure the cost of money, and that math has changed. And owning a bin, even if it's paid for, it's not free to store grain. There's a lot of things that go into it. I like storing grain when the opportunity's there. I like selling it right off the combine when the market's telling you what to do. So a little bit of planning. We just got done getting the crop planted, but a little bit of planning now can sure make your life a lot easier at harvest and also provide cash flow to just keep the shop open.
Do you see any correlation here between our grain and commodity markets and the stock market and what we've seen here in the last couple of months?
Not like the old days, not like 08. I was optimistic when crude oil had a 70 in front of it.
You said the old days, 08.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm showing my age here with the gray hair, but that was a different time, and there was different things going on. That was tied to houses and all types of crazy stuff. But I was really optimistic a few weeks ago when crude oil had a 70 in front of it. We're still paying $3 for gas, but I've noticed crude oil futures are in the middle 60s. If you get crude in the 70s or 80s, you would think that'd have a tug on corn, but the correlation isn't real strong. And if that's what your game plan is, oh, crude's up at 70, I'm really bullish corn, you might lose money on that bet. So there are correlations, but the day-to-day patterns, if this and that, they're not working real well. They haven't worked well in years.
All right, well, it sounds like a market to watch as we go through the rest of this year. Appreciate it, Tommy. We'll be back with more AgDay in just a minute.
Interested in spending a day with a trader? Call Tommy Grisafi at 800-664-4383.
Welcome back to AgDay. Your meteorologist Mike Hoffman. Mike, we always look at the drought monitor to see what the long-term drought looks like. Some of the biggest areas on this map may see some rain this week.
Yeah, and I agree. I think the Four Corner region is going to see some rain, especially New Mexico, the way it looks like with the remnants of bud, but even some of the southern plains will probably see some rain. But as of now, it is still very dry for much of northern Missouri, southern Iowa, down across Kansas and into the desert southwest. There are some pockets that have gotten moisture, but you can still see some extreme exceptional drought in a widespread part of that area. We're seeing a little bit more in some pockets along the Gulf Coast, even in Texas, and also parts of the Rio Grande in Texas. Not a lot of change elsewhere. There's almost no drought in the eastern third of the country right now. As far as 4 weeks ago, you can see how it didn't change a whole lot. It has gotten worse, like I pointed out, in parts of Texas. We've seen some pockets improve briefly after some thunderstorms, and then they kind of go back to being a little bit drier, as you can see. But, you know, you can't get rid of a drought immediately. It takes time because it takes a long time for a drought to develop. There's the forecast map to this morning, and you can see stationary front along the Gulf Coast, a few hit and miss thunderstorms. Warm front will be the focus of some 1 or 2 complexes of thunderstorms, and there's the remnants of bud coming northward. Yesterday our models were taking it into Arizona. Now it's a little farther east, as you'll see. Heading into this afternoon, some scattered showers and thunderstorms northern and central Mississippi Valley, the southeast, southwest as well. And then the remnants of bud coming in. It looks like parts of Arizona will get some moisture out of this as well. This could be some great news for some pretty intense fires in that part of the country. I have some relatives in parts of northwestern New Mexico fire near them is really bad, so hopefully the remnants of Bud can help out there. You can see some other areas getting thunderstorms by later in the day tomorrow as well. There's the past 24 hours, adding in the next 36. There's where the moisture goes with Bud, and this isn't done. It will continue to move northward and eventually kind of flow up along the front the way it looks right now. Some pretty intense thunderstorms showing up in the panhandle of Texas. Very hot through the middle of the country. Low temperatures tonight, muggy for most of the plain states, the northeast and northwest, a little cooler. And that's more of the same as we head into the day tomorrow. Lots of 90s showing up underneath this ridge. But you can see the ridge holds as we head through Father's Day weekend in the Great Lakes in the northeast, and then the trough just continues to develop in the east as we head through next week. That's a look across the country. Now let's take a look at some local forecasts. Casper, Wyoming, first of all, partly sunny, not as hot today. High temperature 85 degrees. Lufkin, Texas, partly sunny, hot and humid, a high up to 93. And Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, mostly sunny, very comfortable, afternoon high 81.
Up next, we're off to the fields for a lesson on irrigation and why you shouldn't cut off the water too soon. Later, a Farm Sense tribute to fathers and the lessons they teach.
Plan for the unexpected with weather forecast updates. Local forecasts are delivered right to your cell phone each morning, making planning a little bit easier. Just text Weather 6 to 31313 to get started.
If you're already running irrigation on your corn crop, make sure you don't stop the water too soon. On Farm Journal College TV today, we see the importance of good soil moisture all the way to black layer.
Well, for irrigating corn, we need to make sure we have adequate soil moisture all the way to black layer. So if we don't have rainfall at that time of the year, we're going to have to keep that pivot or furrow irrigation going until we get to black layer. Or if you take a step back and say, probably by the time I get to 30 to 50% milk line, if I have adequate soil moisture at that point, that'll probably be enough to carry me the rest of the way. So pay attention to what the milk line of your corn is. So this is an example where the milk line has come down and I've only got 40% of my milk line left here. Here I've only got 25% of my milk line left. So again, if you put that last irrigation on between 30 and 50, that'll probably carry you on. If you're in very extreme dry conditions, you may have to actually water all the way to black layer. But remember, kernel depth is what we're having an effect on. Until that black layer is set, we're going to have an effect on kernel weight. Now, how long is it going to take to, say, go from 50% milk line on down to black layer? Well, that's going to depend on the temperatures outside, but it takes about 280 growing degree units to make that happen. So you can always plug that into a calculator that's online, and it'll give you an estimate of how many days. It might take 20 days to get there. Maybe it'd take less than that or more than that, depending on what the actual temperatures are.
When we come back, weeds, flowers, and a lesson about life.
In the Country, sponsored by Kubota. Discover the power behind the M6 series at Kubota.com or visit your local Kubota dealer today.
I can remember summers in my teens, spending the morning in search of tiny yellow flowers in the pastures around our house in New Mexico. Now, these weren't blooms for Mom's table. No, they were weeds. The flower of the goat head, as we called them. They eventually turned to stickers and apparently became my father's nemesis. You see, he spent hour upon hour on the hunt for these weeds, hoping to eventually rid the land of the goat head scourge. And because he was passionate, I too got a chance to join the hunt. Most of those hours were spent grumbling under my breath, nearly blind with anger about the pointless effort in the baking sun hunting goat heads. While one barefoot trek across the ground tells you you'll never rid yourself of what must be the devil's offspring. But since those fury-filled days with a hoe and a 5-gallon bucket, I've learned my dad did me a serious favor. He taught me about work, about tenacity, and about hope and the importance of never giving up even when the task seems inauspicious. Dads are good at doing that stuff, teaching us lessons we don't realize we're learning. And from my first Father's Day to today, these are the things I think about. Am I doing enough to teach my kids the important lessons in life? Those thoughts interrupt my Sunday afternoons, my dinner time meals, and dot my workday concentration. How much is enough? Too much? Where to push and what to let slide? So this Father's Day, as you celebrate dads, and luckily I still have mine around to help me show the way, remember that dads don't have the whole world figured out. Some of it's trial and error. Some of it may just feel like mindless, pointless work. But I promise you, years later, those tasks often flood back as the exact moment your father taught you one of the most important lessons in life. Happy Father's Day, and that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.